Hi, it's V with Crafting Daily Dose, and today I have an interactive alternative for the January 2023 Paper Pumpkin Kit called Key to My Heart. We're going to be using this card base that already comes with a little peekaboo window, and we're going to turn that into a magic slider card. So the front looks a little bit mysterious here with this keyhole shape and a sentiment that says, "You hold the key to my heart." And when the recipient pulls on the slider, surprise, there's that key. Now, I've kept the back simple and just plain, but feel free to decorate it here with some stamping, or if you end up with a leftover key or lock die cut, then that would look really cute added to the back of the card. Here we're going to concentrate on how to make the magic happen with the slider. Now this is a little bit more advanced and uses some extra supplies, but don't worry, as always, I'll show you step by step. Now here are the pieces for this project. Let's start with the ones that come from the kit first. So I'm using this card base and we are going to cut this up together. I'm also using the Fresh Freesia banner, the gold key die cut, and then this sentiment label, but any of the other ones would work as well. I'm using 15 inches of the twine in order to make the little pull for the slider, but that's optional. Now I've added 2 pieces of cardstock here. This is going to be the stopper for the slider. This is 4 inches across by 1 1/4 inches in height. And I've used basic white here, but it's not going to be seen, so you could use a different color if you needed to. This piece of basic white cardstock is going to form the new back of the card. It is 5 1/4 inches across by 5 1/2 inches in height, and it's been scored at 1/2 inch from each of the sides. And then finally, I have a piece of window sheet. This one is 2 1/4 inches across by 4 1/4 inches in height. This is going to cover up the banner from the kit, and actually this banner is just a little bit more narrow than 2 1/4, so you can make this piece a little bit more narrow as well, but it really won't matter too much. Now, in addition to stamping with the Fresh Freesia ink from the kit, I'm also going to be using StazOn ink because this solvent ink is what we need in order to stamp on the window sheet, which is a non-porous surface. Now, just so that you're aware, when you use StazOn ink on these clear photopolymer stamps, you are going to get some staining. There is a special cleaner that you can use, but honestly, I just leave it alone. It doesn't bother me to have that, and it doesn't affect the stamping. And in addition to the usual adhesives, I'm also going to be using some tear and tape. This is available in the Stampin' Up! Store, but we've also had tear and tape in some recent past paper pumpkins, so you might already have some in your stash. Now to make the finger notch at the top of the card, I'm using this retired 1/2 inch circle punch, but any punch or die that you may have that has a small rounded edge would work just fine. And we'll also talk about how you can cut it out by hand. And then I have a punch that creates a very small hole that I'm going to use to add the twine to the top of the slider, but that's optional. We've got our supplies and we are ready to get started. We're going to begin with this piece of cardstock, and as a reminder, it's 5 1/4 inches across by 5 1/2 inches in height, and I've got these 2 score lines that are 1/2 inch from either side. I'm going to go ahead and fold along the score lines and reinforce with my bone folder. So here's what that looks like so far. Next, I'm going to bring in some tear and tape. Now, I'm going to count this as the top of my card, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a piece of tear and tape right underneath this flap here. So just like this. Now you can, of course, tear the tear and tape, but for this I want to be a little bit more precise, so I'll use my scissors. So here it is, there's that flap, and the tape is now underneath, and we'll do the same thing to the other side. So that's the top of the piece, and now I'm going to look at the bottom, and I want to put tear and tape all along this large middle section, right at the bottom edge. I'm going to burnish it down well with my bone folder, but I'm not taking the backing off just yet. So again, we've got some tape on the underside of that flap, and then the top surface of the bottom edge right here. Next, I want to work on the card base. So I'm going to go ahead and just punch this out. I can save this piece for future use. And then I'm going to cut the front and the back apart. So I'm just putting this in my trimmer so that the crease is right along the track here. And then I'll use this darker blade, which is the cutting blade. I'll use that to cut. So this piece is going to be the front of the card. I'm going to set that aside. And now I'm going to work on the remaining piece. What I want to do is to trim off 1/8 of an inch from each edge. Here I've got the short edge along the top of the trimmer, and I'm going to put it at 1/8 of an inch. I'm using the measurements that are on the right-hand side here, and 1/8 of an inch is actually this first tick mark that you can see. The border between the brown and the white is 1/16 of an inch, so this tick mark right here is 1/8. And put it right there. Now, when you are trying to cut a small sliver off, it's usually best to start somewhere in the middle of your cut and then press down and then go down and up from there. If you try to start from the end, sometimes when you're making a very thin cut, your blade is going to meet up with a lot of resistance, and that may make the paper tear or crinkle. So I'm just starting somewhere in the middle. I'm going to press down and then pull down and up from there. And that way I get a very nice clean cut, even though this is a really skinny sliver. Now I'm going to turn it so that I'm cutting 1/8 of an inch off from the other side. So same mark. Press somewhere down the middle. And there you go. This is the top here. And when you look at this colored section is closer to the top. So this is the top right here. I'm going to put this down at 3/8 of an inch. So I'm looking again at these measurements over here. I'm putting it at 3/8 of an inch, and I'm going to trim off from the top. Here's what that looks like. And on the other side of this is that pretty petal pink color. I'm going to save this strip. Since I have my trimmer out, I'm also going to go ahead and trim down this banner from the kit. What I want to do is to make it so that these top and bottom edges are straight. So I'm going to place it so that the long edge, it doesn't matter which one, the long edge is along the top of the trimmer, and I'm going to put this pointy corner right along the track so that when I cut, that should shave off a little triangle, leaving me with a flat edge. I'm going to start from up here so that there's less resistance. And you can see now we've got a nice 90-degree angle here, and we have trimmed off this little wedge. We're going to do the same thing to the other side. So turning it this way, here's our angle. Align that corner with the track. And here you go. Now we have to partially assemble this card before we do stamping so that we can make sure that we get the placement right. So what we're going to do is to take this piece of cardstock and go ahead and take off the backing from this bottom strip of tear and tape here. And you're going to align that with the bottom edge of this piece and center it horizontally as best as you can. There's going to be a little bit of extra adhesive off on the sides here, but that's not going to matter. We just want to make sure that this part is in place and burnish it down well. Next, I want to create the finger notch together with the top of the card. So I'm just going to temporarily hold everything together. I'm folding these flaps in on the side, and I'm just going to hold it together like this. I'm not adhering anything. I just want them to be aligned. And now I'll go ahead and mark the center. It helps a lot because we already have a little dot from the design. That's going to be the center, but I'm going to redraw that dot a little bit higher up. That's going to help me when I go to punch the hole because I can see that more easily. So just holding everything together, having it lined up. I'll bring my punch in and sort of center it by that little mark that I made. And now I have a notch for the top of my card. Again, you can use any other punch or die with a rounded edge that you may have from your stash. This one is not even a circle, but this is a tag die, and the top of it is kind of curved. And so if I didn't have my punch, this could be another option where I just lay it on the top like this and cut out so that it just cuts out this little arch right here. And if you don't have any tools like that, you can cut it out by hand. So here's one of the lock die cuts from the kit. If I take out this little negative space, notice this nice round arch that I have here. I could place it over the top, trace out that arch, and then cut it out with my snips. So lots of options for creating that look. The next step is to create the slider. So here's that piece that we had cut. I'm going to turn it to the back and I'm going to put tear and tape along the bottom edge. I'm lining it up with my grid paper here because that's going to help me for the next step. Here's the cardstock piece that is going to be the stopper. I'm going to attach it to the bottom of the slider piece, and I want to center it horizontally. The reason that the grid paper helps me is that I can count out the squares on either side to help me figure out where the center is. So let me go ahead and peel off the backing. Again, this is our slider piece and we're working from the back. I'm going to put this so that the top edge of my stopper lines up with the top edge of this tear and tape here. And when I have this centered, it is going to be approximately 4 squares on either side. So about 1 inch on either side. Here's what it looks like from the front. I have it just sort of loosely attached for right now so that I can make any adjustments still. And when I'm happy with the placement, then I can go ahead and burnish it down. Next, I'm going to take this complete slider and I'm going to test the position in my card. To do that, I'm going to put it beneath this flap, and what I'm checking for is to make sure that it slides nicely, it's not too tight, and that when it's all the way positioned at the bottom, the slider fits inside the card and I don't have too much hanging out. If I look on the back, I have a tiny bit of overhang. That's not too bad, but if there's a lot, I would go ahead and trim that off. Once I know that nothing is stuck and everything fits, I can pull this out for the next step. This time I'm going to put tear and tape along the top edge of my slider. I'm going to peel off the backing. And then the window sheet is going to go right on top. So I'm lining up the top edge and I'm using the edges of my fingers to line it up horizontally as well. And it should look just like this. Now it's always important to test and retest, so we're going to put this back into this channel back here. The window sheet piece is going to go in front of this panel, and the rest of the slider is going to go behind it, so it looks like this. Once again, we're checking to make sure that everything moves smoothly, nothing is stuck, and that looks good. And now we'll get ready to do some stamping. Here is the front of the card. I'm going to go ahead and put it in position. Now it's ultimately going to rest on top of these tabs, but just to make it a little bit more stable, for right now I'm going to just put it in between the tabs. I don't want anything to shift as I'm stamping. This just gives us placement because I'm going to stamp the sentiment, but I want to make sure that it fits in this keyhole space. I'm going to stamp my sentiment with Stays On ink. Now, when you're stamping on top of window sheet, it's a little bit slick and slippery, so make sure that you are ready to stamp and then press straight down. Try not to rock the stamp because then it might slide and smear. If that happens though, don't panic. You can wipe it off with some rubbing alcohol and try again. Now let's finish preparing the rest of our slider. I'm going to take this out, and what we're going to do is to glue the key on underneath the window sheet layer. So it's going to be right around here, just like that. Let me move that so that you can see it outside of the glare. I'm going to put some glue along the back, and then I'll use a scrap of cardstock as a little squeegee to help spread that glue evenly. I want to make sure that the edges of my key are glued down well so that they don't create any catch points as the slider moves in and out. Now I'll put my silicone craft sheet underneath so that there's a little extra cushion for me to do the rest of the stamping. There's room just underneath the key to stamp the I love you sentiment, and I'll be stamping that in fresh freesia. Now it is a little bit tricky because you have to hold up the window sheet as you're stamping with your other hand, so skip this part if you prefer. I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiment label too. Now we're ready to finish assembling the card. I'm going to take the slider and put another piece of tear and tape along the top. Now I'll attach the piece that had been trimmed off from the card base. And then from the back, I'll just trim off the excess. If you want to add a hole and some twine to create a pull for the slider, then you can do it at this step. I'm making a mark in the center, and then I'll use that as a guide to punch out my hole. I'll take my piece of twine and double it up and push this loop that's in the center here. I'm going to push that through the hole. And then make the ends meet up. I'm just going to tie a knot around my finger. Push that knot down, and then I can trim that off. Now my slider is going to go back into this channel. The window sheet is ultimately going to go on top of this piece, but I don't have to worry about that just yet. Again, I'm just making sure that everything still fits nicely. I can put this window sheet now on top and check and make sure that my sentiment is able to be seen through the hole. So that looks good. Now I'm ready to start putting the adhesive on. Remember these two pieces of tear and tape here along the top edge? Go ahead and tear off the backing now. Once you have that adhesive burnished down, go ahead and test your mechanism again. So just pull that slider up, make sure that everything moves smoothly. And now we're going to put on the front of the card. I'll take some of this tear and tape and put it all the way across, including over these two tabs. So this is all along the bottom edge here. And then I'll put some along the sides as well. I've burnished that down for a good seal, and now I'm going to start to take off some of the backing. I'll peel off the rest of the backing as I go along so that if anything messes up, I'll still have a chance to fix it. And then finally, I'll use the dimensional foam stickers to add on my sentiment. There's our finished card. We got to take advantage of this cute peekaboo window in the card base, and when you pull on the slider, the magic happens. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed this dose of creativity. If you get a chance to try this project, I would love to see it, so share it in my Facebook group or tag me if you're sharing elsewhere. If you're interested in Paper Pumpkin and don't yet have a demonstrator, you can find my subscription link as well as all of my other links in the description box below. I hope to craft with you again next time, and until then, have a great day.